Where did the saying, "If I perish, come from? It wasn't spoken on a battlefield. It wasn't said by a warrior holding a sword. It wasn't the cry of a rebel or a conqueror. It was whispered by a young woman, standing at the edge of death. A woman with no army, no political power, no guarantee she would survive the next few minutes. Her name was Esther, and with a single decision, she risked everything, her crown, her comfort, and her life, to save an entire nation. This is not just a Bible story. This is a story of fear, silence, faith, and bold obedience. This is the story behind the words, "If I perish, I perish." Long before Esther became queen, her people, the Jews, were living in exile. Jerusalem had fallen. The temple was destroyed. Many Israelites were taken far from their homeland and scattered across the Persian Empire. They lived as foreigners, strangers in a powerful land ruled by a king named Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes. Among these exiles was a man named Mordecai, who had taken in his orphaned cousin, a young girl named Hadassah, later known as Esther. She was Jewish, she was beautiful, and she was completely unaware that history was about to call her name. King Ahasuerus ruled one of the largest empires the world had ever known. During a lavish royal feast, Queen Vashti refused the king's command to appear before his guests. Her defiance cost her the crown. Suddenly, the throne beside the king was empty. A search began across the empire for a new queen. Young women were gathered into the palace, prepared for presentation before the king. Esther was taken. She did not volunteer. She was not campaigning for power. She was simply chosen. Under Mordecai's advice, Esther kept her Jewish identity secret, and when the king saw her, she found favour in his eyes. Esther, an orphaned Jewish girl in exile, became Queen of Persia. But the crown did not protect her from what was coming. There was a man named Haman, second in command to the king, proud, ambitious, dangerously offended. When Mordecai refused to bow to him, Haman's anger burned, not just against one man, but against an entire people. When he learned Mordecai was Jewish, Haman made a horrifying decision. He would destroy all the Jews in the empire, men, women, children. Through manipulation and deceit, Haman convinced the king to sign a decree calling for their annihilation. The law was sealed, the date was set, and once a Persian law was signed, it could not be revoked. News spread quickly. Mordecai tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and cried out in the city. Esther heard, but she was safe inside the palace walls, protected, comfortable, silent. When she learned what was happening, Mordecai sent her a message. "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone will escape. If you remain silent at this time, deliverance will arise from another place. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" The words struck her heart. Esther knew the law. No one could approach the king without being summoned, not even the queen. The punishment was death, unless the king extended his golden scepter. She had not been called in 30 days. This was not a brave moment. This was a terrifying one. Esther sent a reply. She asked Mordecai to gather the Jews in the city. "Fast for me," she said. "Do not eat or drink for 3 days." She would fast too. And then she spoke the words that would echo through history. "I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." This was not resignation. This was resolve. Esther accepted the cost before she knew the outcome. Faith does not always come with assurance of survival, only assurance of obedience. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in royal robes. She stood at the entrance of the throne room. Every step forward could be her last. The king saw her. Then he extended the golden scepter. She lived. The king asked her what she wanted, even up to half the kingdom. But Esther did not rush. She invited the king and Haman to a banquet. Then another. Haman, unaware of the trap forming around him, left filled with pride. But that night the king could not sleep. The king ordered the royal records to be read. There he discovered Mordecai had once saved his life and had never been rewarded. At the second banquet, Esther finally spoke. She revealed her identity. She exposed Haman's plot. She pleaded for her people. The king's anger burned. Haman fell. The decree could not be undone, but a new one was issued. The Jews were allowed to defend themselves. What was meant for destruction turned into deliverance. The gallows Haman built for Mordecai became his own. The Jews survived. They rejoiced. They celebrated what God had done through one woman's courage. This deliverance became the Feast of Purim, still celebrated today. And Esther's words lived on, not because she perished, but because she was willing to. If I perish, I perish. These words are not about death. They are about surrender. They remind us that purpose often requires risk, that obedience may cost comfort, that courage is choosing faith even when fear is loud. Esther didn't know the ending when she stepped forward. She only knew she could no longer remain silent, and neither can we.